Well, hello there, friends, and welcome to another episode of the 360 Experience podcast. I'm your host, Tim Braheem, and today my guest is a very longtime friend and a mentor, Jim McMahan from Benchmark Funding. I first remember learning from Jim McMahan back in the early 1990s when I was a new originator. I always admired him from afar, and then over time we became friends. And then recently we reconnected at an event that we were at in Las Vegas for Matt Emery's Mastermind in June of 2025. This conversation is going to be about the topic of connecting with clients, educating clients, and creating annuity-based income in your mortgage practice. And we will tackle the subject matter of today's day and age with artificial intelligence and technology and how it impacts loan originators' ability moving forward. And what you're going to find from listening to this episode is that Jim is just an incredibly articulate man who has a heart of gold and brings a tremendous amount of value to his customers, which is why I was so attracted to him as an originator early on in my career and wanted to emulate him in so many ways. Now, before we get to this conversation, I want to remind you that you have a way to communicate with us, and it's in the show notes below. It's 360 at theloanatlas.com. So 360 at theloanatlas.com. And you can send us any ideas that you have on how to make the show better. You can give us your feedback. You can let us know what other guests you'd like for me to have on the show. I'm really grateful for you being a listener. I hope that you're a subscriber. If you're not, it would be great if you could subscribe. The more subscribers we have, the better. If you like this episode, forward it along to a friend. We're looking to help as many people in the mortgage business as we can right now. And that's why I keep trying to bring in guests that are great teachers like Jim McMahan. And without further ado, my friends, my conversation with Jim McMahan in the 360 Experience. Jim McMahan, wow, it is really, truly a pleasure and an honor to have you with me here today. I think where I want to start is going back, way back through memory lane. Yeah. I think the year was 1994, and probably. Business was tough back in 1994, and I went to my first Todd Duncan event, and you were speaking at it on the stage along with some other names that I'll drop here that you'll remember, guys like Tom Fiddler and Jeff Lake, and of course, Greg Frost, God rest his soul, and of course, Todd and all the other legends, Barry, et cetera. And I was a sponge back then as an originator. I'd been an originator for about a year and a half. They were selling audio cassettes in the back of the room, if you remember.
In a big box, yes.
Everybody was saying how 8-track tapes weren't in vogue anymore. Now we're selling audio cassettes. Yeah. I bought an audio cassette series that you had done where you had recorded for all of us in the audience the way that you took clients through the consultative process as an originator and your philosophy on creating clients for life. And man, I got to tell you, like back then there were all these legendary teachers such as yourself, but you were the one for whatever reason that resonated with me the most. I was always the big Jim McMahan fanboy in the background going, that's the guy who I want to emulate. His scripting is unbelievable. I love the way he presents himself, the way he talks to a client, the way he counters objections. His scripting was incredible. And I learned so much from you. So first of all, thank you for having such a huge impact on my career and having a lot to do with my success as an originator. And then, running into you recently at Mastermind in Vegas and having dinner with you was sure a treat for me. So what I want to do is I want to go back to those early days as we start our dialogue here today. Tell me a little bit about your philosophy when you were a loan originator, about how you took care of clients and how you built a long-term relationship with them to create an annuity-based income structure in your loan practice.
Wow. Well, thank you for that very kind introduction, dear friend. And great to see you and be with you. And that was a blast in Vegas. It was a couple of really good dinners and hours of catch-up time. So thanks, Tim, very much. Great to see you. Very happy for you. And I'm going to say it too, proud of you as a maybe slightly older brother for all you've done. And thanks for all you've done for my people, for people in the industry. It's been amazing to watch. So great job. But great question. And that's a great launching point for today's discussion, because I think my heart more than ever in my 38th year now doing this crazy business has always been to make a difference that lasts. And that began with clients for sure. And then a branch that I ran, and then a company that I affected, and other companies. And now today a company that I own, with a couple other people. And the impact still in the industry is a difference that lasts. And of course that could be in a lot of fronts, right? From the standpoint of, first and foremost, of course, financial, because that matters to all things, not only in our country, in our communities, in our neighborhoods, et cetera. But I always took it that serious. But as I've evolved over time and developed to how much it matters what we do, it became more serious, but in a fun way, in a good way. And I know you and I can talk about that too, with lifestyle today and where you're sitting right now and where I'm sitting right now. But back to that foundational question, I think I saw in the late 80s, early 90s, an industry that still today mirrors what I'm about to say, even though technology is way further advanced. We have been always an industry, Tim, where the majority of people that serve others in this business and getting a home loan may be well-intentioned, may be highly integrous, as most are, and very knowledgeable. That so many are fiscally illiterate. And I saw that early in my career. I like numbers, pretty decent in economics. And so I took a passion towards that whole phenomenon of client for life that you're talking about. Kind of coined the term fiscal literacy, not that it was new, but I used it a lot. Becoming fiscally literate, and then everything advice-based. And around that mindset, you remember I was talking about it then in 94. I had hired an ACT consultant off of a little tear-off sticker at a CompUSA, because I think we swapped a lot of notes on that over the years as you built what you built in that early easy database stuff today. We'll talk about a story in a minute, but that was my heart for sure, was to realize the power, Tim, of doing business with fewer of the right people. And, that can be a confusing comment. Wait, don't I want to serve everybody? Well, good luck on that one. I mean, go try. You can't do it. But you can have a certain message that resonates with you and that you're impactful on getting things done if you really work on it. And it will tend to attract, because we're all different personalities, sometimes older, younger, whatever in the business, male, female, et cetera. All those things impact different groups. None of us are meant to serve everybody. And so if you can become better and better at serving a targeted audience that resonates with your message that you go to work on, that's where my infamous line that I honestly stole from Jim Rohn when I was 19 years old in a seminar in Austin, Texas, but I put it up at every seminar you ever saw me do, was there are enough people that will do business my way. I'll never, ever have to worry about those who will not. And of course, I said that over and over just so it would cement in my brain and I'd stick to my disciplines. And that resonated well. I've been able to build a company around that. I built a pretty world-class business. The numbers. Was one of the first guys to make $1 million legitimately in the business in 1998 and all those things. But the bigger thing with those stories was really helping others do the same and making that impact with customers and people that became clients and friends. And I know I'm being long-winded on this, but I'll just repeat a story we just said in the pre-call. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, I've been blessed this way for a long time, but literally last night evening, I get a text, recognize the name immediately. It popped up in my merged database into my, Apple phone from all these 30 some years. There was a guy named Steve in Dallas, Texas. Hey, Jim, voice from the past. I haven't talked in a long time. Of course, I am technologically savvy enough. It actually pops up and I can click back into my old notes. There was notes in there from 1998, Tim, on stuff when I'd sent him from refinancing or whatever, named Steve Armand, but I know he wouldn't mind me mentioning it. In fact, I told him this morning, I'm probably going to use this in a podcast today. He just said, look, I thought of you. I'm buying this house in Colorado in a major ski resort and really, really would love to connect. Had talked in a long time. We ended up talking for an hour this morning. And just had a fantastic conversation. It was fascinating because I was in my notes in there and I was telling him, what I was looking at. And we caught up. He's a CFO now of a big private healthcare company. And going back 23 years when I did his first loan and then his lake house and some refinances and stuff. And he said, look, man, I need advice. I'm buying this place. Tell your ride, blah, blah, blah. And so after a great conversation, I connected him with one of my managers here and they've already texted me that they're rocking. He's making an offer today. But isn't that crazy? I mean, you're 38, own a company, about 700 and something employees. and a past client text last night, and I'm doing a podcast with you today. But that to me confirms the message that in that very good question you asked of the outcomes you can have in so many ways if you stick to a foundational truth of making a difference for others, advice-based, and always working on yourself, Tim. I think you heard me say that back then, and I'm saying it today.
So this is a really important thing for us to go deeper on. So I want to put myself in the shoes of a newer originator, maybe that's been in the business for 5 years or less. And they're listening to this and they're hearing about this advice-based, fiscal literate conversation and how it spawned not just a flourishing mortgage origination practice for you going way back 30 some odd years, but how it's still paying dividends today. An annuity income is what we're talking about here. I mean, this is exactly what we discuss time and again about how there's an ability to create an annuity-based income structure within the mortgage business. And it starts with that first loan that you do with somebody. And if you really do an exceptional job on that first loan and make an impact and a difference, they're going to keep coming back and they're going to refer their friends and family to you. So the next question is this. If I'm an originator listening to this episode of the 360 Experience and I'm hearing this, where does one go in today's day and age to A, become fiscally literate, and B, what are some of the foundational things that you deem to be critically important in making that impact on someone to where they're coming back for sure and they're referring friends and family members to you in the future?
Yeah, awesome questions. So let's break that down. On the fiscally literate part, it's interesting, Tim, because that is still a major weakness with many originators. They're either afraid of it and you don't want to go there because math wasn't their subject or economics or whatever. But you've got to go there. You have got to build. Let's say it this way. David Childers always quotes me on this. I have always said you must have a credible market opinion based on fact. And that's the key. So the listener, write that one down. I need to develop a credible market opinion based on fact. And that's a big deal. That's what people stick to. That's why Steve called me this morning. And again, so amazing timing wise. But the credit market opinion based on fact, today we have resources that are unreal. So the first thing I would tell that 5-year or less originator is to step back and don't focus on the outside world of your business today, or break down maybe 2 hours a day for the next week or so. So commit 10 hours. And let's shut up the phone, put an away message, have your assistant, whatever, but you know what to do, where you can get some on time, because most of us spend 100 to 110% of our time in our businesses constantly churning and trying to solve problems and doing loans. And you can make a dang good living doing that. And I'm not going to knock that. But you want to make a life, Tim, you want to make a life-changing life choice for yourself and your family, you go get some on time where you break the barrier down. You break your limiting beliefs down and you get through them and start to learn how to have a credible market opinion that really is based on fact. And it's crazy what can happen, as you and I both know. So let's talk about the resources. And of course, our dear friend Barry Habib, we were just at dinner with, and let's give Barry credit. I mean, he created Mortgage Market Guide, sold it. Today, MBS Highway, major impact. Those are both incredible resources. The other one, Keeping Current Matters, KCM. My very dear friend, Steve Harney, God rest his soul. I mean, you look at all the amazing friends of ours, from Frosty, Greg Frost, you mentioned, to others, but Steve Harney passed away last year. Really, really dear friend. He gave me credit, which I give him credit, but we did a lot of seminars together. Well, that guy was an impact big time in the real estate world. Tom Ferry would say the same thing. He's a huge friend of Tom Ferry's. And today, David Childers, runs Keeping Current Matters with Steve's son, Bill. And those are just resources you have to have in your sheath or your sword saber holder today, Tim, if you're going to be relevant with an opinion. You should be using those resources daily, minimum, a couple times a day, doing reviews with yourself in the morning or evening, and then practicing certain things and then talking it out with an accountability partner or friend so that you have a credible market opinion in the short term, micro, and then macro of a bigger picture phenomenon. Right now for the Fed, I mean, you can't miss what's going on. If you just do the old equation that me and Barry talked for a year on what RI is, real interest rates, and inflation relative versus inflation over time. And I'm getting a little complicated, but you know what I'm doing right now, Tim? You saw me do this for years. I'm professionally confusing the listener because then it creates curiosity. That was my old eloquent slam to get people to understand that I knew a little bit more than they did. And that became the lure. So just challenging the listener to look at the resources you should be using, not using, are using, are you maximizing them to get what? The next level of education for you that you can translate to a borrower and a family that will not only help this transaction, but it will last into multiple transactions and even legacy. That is the answer on the fiscal literacy part. You want to pause there? We can, because the second part then is, of course, the borrower part and the trust part. But you tell me, is that too much or?
No. Let me just synthesize a couple of things, and then you can go to the next part. So
Please.
This took me back in a big way through memory lane. That phrase, I remember vividly listening to the audio cassette in my office and hearing you talk about eloquently slamming the customer. And I remember thinking,
and it's with love, believe me.
Oh yeah, with love. No. There was no part of it that was venomous, right? It was like, I remember the phrase vividly and going, wow, I love that phrase. Like that is my job, is to eloquently slam them to where at the end of the conversation, they're like, he knows way more than I do. And look, if, I say this all the time, Jim, like right now, I'll ask the question when I'm speaking, like, how many of you had a client in September of 2024 or February of 2025 tell you that they wanted to wait, that you talked to them about refining and they said, I don't think now's the right time. I saw on the news or I read on the internet or whatever. That's important information. What they're saying to you is that you have not established enough authority and credibility with me to where I'm going to yield and surrender to you, i.e., I have not eloquently slammed them to put myself in a position where they view me as the authoritative figure. All that is information saying you still have work to do. Now, I love the fact that you mentioned Highway. Obviously, Barry and Dan are two of the great teachers in this industry.
Unbelievable.
If you don't have your CMA, you're making a mistake. I mean, this is the part that isn't sexy, right? Like the sexy thing is your Instagram reels and managing your database with your drip marketing campaign and coming up with your new way of going after real estate agents or financial advisors, et cetera. But the part that most originators skip over is this key component that you're talking about, which is the authoritative understanding of the financial markets. I just had Jeremy Forcier on my podcast, and he and I talked a lot about this, about how he came to a realization early in his career that he didn't have his own personal house of cards in order as it related to financial planning. Like he didn't really understand how to manage his own finances to the degree that he needed to. So how in the world can you take an authoritative position if you don't first understand what it is that you need to be doing within your own financial structure? So these conversations are extremely important that we're having here, and I'm glad that you bring this up. So you would spend the 5 days a week for 2 hours, 10 hours of on time, just understanding fiscal literacy, financial advice, and then let's talk about the practicing part before you get to the customer, because I think that's an important piece. Did you practice? Like, how did you get good at articulating all of these important messages in your scripting, which generated the authority you were looking for?
Yeah, awesome question, because I know you kind of know the answer and remember, but I used to carry around one of the little bitty recorders in my early days, and, practice does make perfect. And, I think one of the biggest messages there, Tim, is to answer, can audit this, but you froze for a second. But to answer the question, what do I say? Each of you listening needs to ask that question. What do I really say? What is my message in the marketplace? I'm big, as you know, on just bullet points like this in seminars so that you can go back and study. And that's going to be some of the takeaways of this talk today, is what do I say and what is my message in the marketplace? Because you may think you have a message in the marketplace that you understand, but Tim and I could right now go take anybody listening here, get 5 of the past borrowers you just closed in the last 30 days and 2 referral partners, interview them each for 15 to 20 minutes, who will tell you what your message in the marketplace is. I used to do that when I'd coach people. And sometimes it aligns, sometimes they're, a few feet, or sometimes they're a mile apart. But that's the key, is practicing what you say. it's got to have stickiness if you want to attract the right people, of course. And so the combination of being scripted to get on the phone with someone who, I mean, let's think about it from a psychological standpoint, Tim. Nothing's changed today as it was when I started and when you started. Human beings have the defense shield up. This is a scared to death type phenomenon of a transaction. People do it 2 to 5 times in a lifetime, maybe 3 to 7 if they're relocation people or traveler, buy a second home or whatever. And even if it's a doctor to a lawyer to a ditch digger, they don't totally understand what you and I understand. So let's make that easier and let's make that patterned with some questions, right? There, you mentioned Todd earlier and the high trust phenomenon and different things that we've all used bits and pieces of and created more, better, different. But bottom line is there's nothing new under the sun, as King Solomon wrote 6,000 or 7,000 years ago in Ecclesiastes, from the standpoint of human behavior and how people think and react because of the way our souls and our bodies and minds are made. And so to go and understand what's really important to someone and ask them, Mrs. Smith, before we get going, I want you to understand that I've developed a certain expertise on debt strategy and on helping people align ownership in real estate to what their long and short-term financial goals are so that we can truly make a difference that lasts and create security you never really imagined. How about that? Let's just start with that. And then making sure all of our referral partners know I'm going to say that to their people. And what do you feel about that, Mary, Betty, Sam, realtors, financial planners, so you get total buy-in. There's so many cool layers to this, Tim, that to me, I always found fun, and you did too, on building that dream machine for the customer through messaging, through communication, and making sure it's not just about you. It's about all the people and all the parties in the show, if you will, so that you get the wow every time. And the ones that don't say wow are the ones that say, because here's one, let's just go on this tangent for a minute, Tim. A lot of people on 5 years and under especially are going to be going, oh, you don't understand my customer. You don't understand my realtor in their minds right now, right? The subliminal negative thought process that develops. I just told people all this good stuff that I learned from Braheem, a month ago, and they went and shopped it somewhere else. Well, how about this one next time? Then when they do that, they come back to you and you say, well, gosh, Mr. Smith, yeah, I appreciate you went and shopped that and took the information in the hour presentation I did and all the work that my team did for you and found someone that said they could do it the same for a quarter less. But what you may not have understood is we really have invested in this process and this time, and with your referral partner that is helping you with the home process. So we'd love to anchor this for you and manage that debt strategy over time. And certainly you haven't even bought a home yet, so we don't know what the rates are. And I mentioned malpractice if someone quotes you a rate and guarantees it when you don't have a home. But with that aside, if it's most important to you on rates and fees, certainly you can go that direction, but I'm going to use the slot that we've held for you for this closing over the next 45 days for someone else. Hopefully you can understand that. But if something changes, we'd love to talk to you again. And I'm just saying, there's the eloquent slam, Tim, right? That may be a little harsh or whatever, but the point is, you have got to be prepared through practice and through basically, yes, transactional phenomena that have happened that allow you to progress. So here's a big one for everybody. You need to ask yourself where you're at right now in your career. Do you feel like you are progressing, sitting still, or regressing? Because I can tell you the law that I have proven out in 38 years of doing this and 64 years of life. If you are not progressing, you are regressing. Promise you. You may not know it yet, you may not feel it yet, but you will eventually. And you can look at other instances in your life. So I'm glad we're spending a lot of time on this, Tim. It's such a super important subject for those that want to take this really serious to the next level and have fun with it at the same time. You need to practice. And that's where we just started that question. What do I say? Record yourself. I love it. I used to coach people, Tim, that would go, but I don't want to hear myself. Well, then you think somebody else wants to? You've got to break through those barriers. But when you do, what happens on the other side is just mind-bending.
So there's a couple of things that I want to elaborate on a little bit further there that you said that I think are really important. So that ability to, when somebody has told you that they're going to go somewhere else, to have some kind of a response that shows, a degree of confidence and pride in yourself, I think is very important. Too often times our ego gets engaged in the process and we get frustrated. We start chasing. We start trying to get tricky with our languaging. What I heard there was somebody who said, hey, no problem. I'm sorry that you felt the need to spend an hour through my presentation and then decided to shop and go somewhere else for a quarter. And we're not going to be able to keep this spot open for you. I think that's a really important message that you're sending to yourself as well, because I don't think that we should underestimate the fact that ultimately at the end of the day, the product is you. That's what you're selling. And you don't have a degree of respect for yourself, you're going to be engaging in a lot of dysfunctional relationships, which goes back to, I think that the quote that Jim Rome had said that meant so much to you, which is there are enough people out there that want to do business with me in the way that I do business. So not taking it personally, not being frustrated, just simply identifying this isn't one of those people. Now I want to run a scenario by you that I heard recently, and I want to get your take on it. So there's a great loan originator who I coach. His name is Edgardo Ballantyne. And he laid out a really cool script, I think, which is when the client says to him, after the presentation, and then they start rate shopping and they come back to him and they say, hey, so-and-so is, 1/8% better in the rate or 1/4% better in the rate than you. And I think I'm going to go with them. He then simply replies with the following. So, or when they say to him, I should articulate this part too. When they say to him, can you match that rate? Okay, so they say, hey, they're at 6 3/4 and you're quoting me 6 7/8. Can you match the rate? He'll say, well, before I answer that question, if I were to match the rate, would you go with me? And they would say yes. And then he would say, why? Why would you go with me for the same rate versus this other person? Like, what are the specific reasons? So the person would then articulate to him all of the things that they find to be valuable about him. Well, I really enjoyed our initial conversation. I like how you position yourself as a debt manager, that you're going to continue to monitor my loan program for me going forward. I like how we talked about some alternative loan products that I'd never heard of before. I like how responsive you've been, et cetera, et cetera. And then he'll say to them, how much is that worth to you? And then they'll say, well, I don't know. And they'll say, is it worth $17 a month after tax? Because that's what we're talking about right now. The difference between 6 7/8 and 6 3/4 is $17 a month after tax. Are you willing to walk away from all that value that you see in me to save yourself $17 a month and walk away from the future management of your debt and the future of this business relationship long term? I think that's a really brilliant response. What's your take on that?
Oh, yeah. It's incredible. And what a great dialogue. I mean, that is what the listener needs to hear is, what do I say? What do you say in those responses? How confident are you of your value? It's brilliant. And I did something similar to that with folks for sure. You've got to have that kind of, again, the eloquent slam, loaded gun, however you want to call it. But it's so important to help someone understand the why, the WHY behind what you're trying to do for them and the value of it, Tim. And there's nothing wrong with standing up for that. But I love what you said earlier too about it. Don't let the ego take over. Don't let the competitive kind of evil side of not evil, but the competitive side of just us going after something in the wrong way. Sometimes it's just seeking to understand, like you just did, and then rephrasing the truth. And I can tell you, usually people won't let half of that script back to them be said without going, I hear your point. Let's go forward. I had that happen a ton of times in my career. But think about it. For the person who hasn't built the words and the boldness to do that, they don't give themselves that at bat to be able to have that outcome. And then see what begins to happen there too. And I'm going to dialogue to a real live thing that happened today with me in this really cool conversation with a guy that I really knew well back in the day when he was growing his family stuff and did 4 loans for him. And then today we talked. I literally asked him at the end, I said, Steve, I got to ask. I'm looking in here. I have my notes. Obviously, I remember immediately when you called me because you were in the tech business and I asked you that. And then now you're in the healthcare. When's the last time you remember we talked? He goes, I got your emails for years, Joe, but it's been 10 years. This happened this morning. And I said, I really appreciate this. It means a lot to me. And, had clients over the years. You remember that back then? And he goes, you still doing that speaking thing? He literally asked me that, Tim. I said, not really, but I'm doing a podcast today with an old friend. But that's the impact and the interesting part, because my point is this guy today that I spoke with, he is still a CFO for a big time private healthcare company, and was back then. And he wasn't the toughest, he wasn't the easiest client to just win over, right? He was super numerical, super educated, but he went for the advice piece. And then he's finding me this many years later through, obviously I leave trails with marketing and stuff still, but isn't that amazing that we're talking about this subject and then have a real life example from today? And so I guess my take on that and my emotional response, this is worth it for you listening to look in the mirror and say, it's still Zig Ziglar line, Tim. If it's to be, it's up to me. I have to really step up. All the challenges you have with anything in the marketplace, recessions, government debt, inflation up or down, those things are going to come and go. The bigger outcome will be you improving you with what you say, how you communicate and deepen relationships with referral partners, building that financial pillar with the affinity pillar and partnership, which we can get into in a little bit, because most of us that were really successful did that diversification piece to build a world-class, stream of income and outcome for others. So yeah, this is huge stuff. I really hope the listener can repeat and look at this a couple of times and write down some of these nuggets. This is good stuff.
So I think that also the average salesperson that I encounter doesn't embody the self-reflectiveness that you're talking about. And I think that that's what you're really describing, is one's ability to say, okay, why is it that this person said no to me? I mean, we usually just move on rather than, and I think that's where the gold is there's only so many objections out there, right? I mean, they're on a repetitive loop. And if you can get one of the objections covered because you develop scripting in a potent way that eloquently slams them, how many extra deals a month are you going to do? And that's why it's so incredibly valuable to record your sessions, to go back and listen to them, to listen for the places that you felt uncertain, like energetically, like did you stutter? Did you stammer? Where did it catch you off guard with a rebuttal that maybe you weren't ready to cover? And maybe more importantly, how do you cover that rebuttal before it can ever be voiced? How do you make that objection countering script a part of your standard presentation? But finally, how about just asking when somebody says that they're going to go another place, they're going to go to their credit union, they're going to go to, their brother-in-law's lender that they were referred to. Can you share with me what it was that made you want to go there versus work with me? I'm looking to get better and improve on my profession. It would be incredibly valuable to me to understand what I didn't do well so I can look to improve in the future. That's a very attractive quality, by the way, when somebody articulates that. Like if somebody said that to me, I'd be like, man, I really like this guy. I mean, like the guy's looking to get better, and that's going to leave a lasting impression on me. And you don't know, because I'm sure you had this happen to you, Jim. There were many deals that I lost, and then I got the refi. They came back to me after they did the purchase with someone else. Why? Because more than 50% of the time, they aren't even happy with the experience that they had with the lender that they chose over me. And they remember me because I left them with a lasting impression.
I'll give you a real observation then off of that. And yes, that happened to me too. Two big takeaways from what Tim just said. One of the most powerful disciplines you can create as an up and coming an originator or someone who's really just honing your craft at a high level now. Am I premeditating my profits? Premeditating my profits means premeditating my outcomes. That's what you just heard Tim describe. And then the second one would be, where do I need to increase my boldness? There's people that I've coached, you've coached him, that, I'm more, chill than that. I'm not that bold. BS. I mean, you're bold somewhere or you wouldn't be in this business. You have an opinion, obviously, on things, and somewhere there's just places that maybe you're weaker than others because you haven't practiced. That's all. And so self-reflection, that was my whole deal, man. I mean, honestly, Tim, probably the reason I created McMahan Mortgage Consulting so long ago, got on stage, took all the opportunities I did. It was my way of constantly making myself be accountable to all the stuff I said. We all need something that keeps us stable and growing and progressing, because it's so easy to regress if you don't. And so sometimes it's a success partner, sometimes it's coaching. That's why I think your business has been so successful because you bring such authenticity to it, with that consistency and that message of continually improving, continually checking. We're a 30-day cycle business, right? I mean, think about that. It's crazy when you think of the madness of that and what we need to manage in ourselves and others. And if you're not practicing, I mean, think of athletics. Football's kicking off again, and here we go. These guys are prepping for a 16-game season, and if you make the playoffs, maybe 20. But they never stop practicing now, right? It's a never-ending phenomenon. And if you want to master our business, it's got to be the same way.
So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, the Loan Atlas. And then we come back, I want to talk to you about affinity referral partners, because you just mentioned that, and I'm super curious to get your take on that. We'll be right back.
Out of curiosity, why do you think it is that some originators are sitting around with empty pipelines while others are having some of their best months ever in their careers? Well, as a coach and faculty member inside of the Loan Atlas, it is abundantly clear to me that one type of originator is armed with the information, the inspiration, and the implementation coaching they need to ensure 2025 is more successful than 2024. If you're ready to turn your goals into reality, the Loan Atlas is here to help. Click on the link in the description to schedule your complimentary success consultation now.
Okay, so affinity partners, what does that mean to you? Like, I think you and I can easily go down memory lane and go back 25 or 30 years on things, but let's bring it to today's world. Like, what are the top originators with Benchmark? And we know some of the same people, especially Mike Watson, who's just one of the great guys and loan originators that we both know. What are people in today's world? Like, we've got AI, we've got a lot of advanced technology and other capacities, but what are you seeing that's working right now? And what do you recommend originators embrace as it relates to developing relationships with affinity partners?
Okay. Well, and thanks for saying that, Michael. Appreciate that. I know he loves you. We've got, yes, we do. Got some folks that do some amazing things. Denise Donahue, she was up there on stage with us and the event, and others. And that's the beauty of today's world, even with technology and stuff and social media and all that, Tim. Mike's business model is, polar opposite difference than, say, Denise or others. And yet they make a huge difference that lasts with people all the time. And so I think one of the things today is being clear on, before I answer the affinity question, one of my mentors always used to say, are you clear on what you want to be when you grow up? And then all the time and reassess that. Meaning at the next stage of your business or your career. And then if you're mentoring and have a team, are you clear on what they want to be or are trying to be when they grow up in their roles respectively? And so as you develop your business, one of the most important things that let's focus on now in this conversation is a pillar, because I'm huge on, if you're going to build a diverse, successful mortgage practice, it cannot be just one channel. In other words, I love realtors, but the first year I hit 100 million in 1998, I was down to 8 or 10 really world-class realtor relationships, where in 1991 I had 50. But by that point, I had begun to ask in the early 90s, oh, by the way, Mr. Smith, your tax return disorganized, or you see something in the stuff they turned in. You must have a great relationship with a CPA or financial planner that you like. In other words, I started to change my words because I wanted to diversify into more pillars and more ways. And one of the things, I'm going to digress here, because I was like, I'm an over information guy, Tim, but I think it's so important because it'll affect the right people that are listening in the right moment. You've got to be clear on where you're going, not just doing loans. And one of the best ways to do that is to get reality on the marketplace you're in. I love it when I'm coaching someone, they say, oh, my realtors are slow right now, so my business is off. My first immediate homework assignment I tell them to do is, sometimes I'll do it in the middle of a coaching call. I'll say, we're going to hang up the phone and do a 15-minute break. Really? I said, yeah, you're going to call Chicago Title, American Title, and Capital Title, or whoever's in your market. You're going to call somebody over there or name a name and get the numbers on what they just closed this month or this quarter and the units And I want you to put that on a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. On the right side, list the title company closings within your marketplace. And on the left side, list your closings. And then call me back and explain the difference. And every time people laugh and go, oh, crap, or oh, jet, or whatever, because the reality is that's a brain bender of how much business is in the marketplace. So how that relates to this affinity pillar is that so often originators just miss the reality of the business they're trying to make through their little, shoveling a driveway in the middle of winter, or, digging a tunnel to break out of the kind of mold that they're in. You forget what's out there. The marketplace around all of you listening is ginormous. I don't care if you live in a small town, rural town, whatever. The marketplace today, all around you, next big city, it's you can define your own in today's world, but you have to stretch that brain. And so one of the biggest missed pillars that I've seen over the years, and thank goodness I figured it out in the 90s with some great coaching and mentors, was that affinity pillar. The more powerful person in someone's life when they start to have any financial success is the CPA, is the lawyer, is the financial planner. And a realtor is part of that team. The realtor wants to be on that team. And you can use that as a powerful tool to connect that back when you get to a level like I built, like Tim built, and some of the others out there. And so, Tim, I just began probably my 5th or 6th year in the business. At anything going on decent in their lives financially, oh, by the way, I saw this, and this. Do you have a CPA or financial planner that you think highly of? And then, of course, they'd answer yes. It'd be, would you please make an introduction now or during our transaction so that I can keep them updated on what I'm doing for you all, and then maybe help them in the future, and hopefully they can help me. There was never a no. And then if the person said, no, I don't, well, then I was ready to bring one of the 4 or 5 that I counted as my best. And that became a giant part of my business. Still has a lasting effect today, really.
I think what you said there is super important that I think often is forgotten, which is successful people, they have to cover their bases in a variety of different areas in their life. I mean, you and I both have attorneys. We both have real estate attorneys. We both have financial advisors. We both have CPAs. If somebody were to do a loan for me or you, there's like 4 or 5 people that you could get introduced to just from doing one loan if you're scripted properly. And I want to call to everyone's attention. I'm sure that people listening have taken note of the fact that I can pull scripting out of my back pocket very quickly and I can rattle things off very fast. Why? Just like Jim is right now, he's rattling off a bunch of very powerful scripts off the top of his head. Why? Because he said it so many times. It's that
literally
practice.
I didn't prepare for this at all, other than I know you.
Yeah, it's that practice and repetition that you were talking about recording yourself, constantly looking to improve. I loved what you said earlier, that if you're not progressing, you're regressing. There is no in between. You have to constantly be looking to get better. And, listen, the way to develop these relationships, as you're pointing out, with alternative sources of referrals, such as, and we didn't talk about life insurance agents. They are great sources of referrals. A lot of people don't realize that. I had a terrific Northwestern Mutual life insurance agent by the name of Todd Ginty, who used to refer 20 deals a year to me. Okay. How did I get him? Well, I just asked. I just asked for introductions, and you ask for enough introductions, you're going to get them. A guy that we both know and love, Caleb LeGrand. The guy refers 4.7 deals on a monthly basis because, as you know, he tracks his numbers like nobody we've ever seen. 4.7 deals a month to real estate agents. How does he do it? Every single transaction he asks, how's your relationship with your realtor? Would you like to be referred to an outstanding professional in our marketplace? I happen to work with a lot of them. It's a yes or no answer. A lot of the times they're going to say yes, boom, you make an outbound referral. Now you start to create a reciprocal referral relationship. So let's talk technology. Like, when we were at Mastermind and I was at the luncheon that you were speaking at, that topic came up. What's your take on the future of the industry? I know there are a lot of originators that are worried that they're going to be replaced. I'd love to get your take on that. And I'd love to get your take on whether do you see a world where originators that are embracing artificial intelligence, as an example, in a substantial way, create a leg up versus their competition?
Wow. Okay. So I'll hit my observation 30,000 foot view first, and then maybe repeat a couple of those last couple questions. I'm going to go back first to 94, like you said, when we met, to 98. In that 4 years, anybody who was in the business or even a young person or whatever, then you remember as the internet was coming and speed was added. Except remember, it was about 98 when you could get on E-Trade, Tim, and buy a stock, right? And this little spinning wheel did it fast enough. But lots of every seminar, and I did a lot back then. And, from probably 96 to 07, Barry and I were talking about this the other day. I think he did 1,000 or more. I probably did 400 plus seminars. And everybody asked, especially in the 90s, is the internet going to replace us? Is the internet going to replace us? Like, I mean, literally fear sometimes in the room with small groups of, it's just a matter of time, right? What do we do to prepare? And my answer was, because I was getting asked that early on, no. I mean, human beings, if you've had enough loan transactions, the people that really lock in best with you, it is an emotional truth that they saw value in the relationship and the advice and the maybe even handholding sometimes, but getting it done. Handholding meaning not just with you, but your team and the whole process. And so I was confident then, and I'm confident now to say, people want to deal with people who know what they're talking about. Now, that said, they also want to deal with people who are savvy technology-wise, savvy on moving things along, savvy on being digitally based and doing things in a way that is efficient. I look at the millennial generation who's now into their 30s, but I got two daughters in that, and I remember when they were all coming out of college, and then friends buying homes 10 years ago or so, and a big group when we're down at our lake house outside of Dallas one time, and I mean, there's a couple of engineers, and all these young guys were asking me a million questions, and then saying, well, I did this on the internet, that, but I really want to do this. Who should I? Can you still do loans? And I laughed, Tim, because I give that story. Even that generation who's now aging, everyone said, oh, they want to do everything just by the internet. And didn't work out to be true. They want information from the internet, but they want the home run of relationship and connection if someone will give it to them. That's the secret right now. That's the magic still. So when I look at AI, I'll tell you a fun story that literally just happened last week. Like all of us in our companies and people we know, there's people that are old dogs like us and then up and comers. And I had a young manager come down to our place in Key West, taking some guys fishing in our company, and they came down. A guy named Casey is up in Tennessee, and he calls me and says, "Hey, can I bring Clayton?" His young loan officer. This young guy was literally at LOA 11 months ago, and things have been tough as we came through this kind of mortgage recession the last few years and higher rates, blah blah blah. And it was a moment where Clayton was maybe going to go away and not be in the business. And Casey challenged him, "You want to be a loan officer?" And he said, "Yeah." And so Clayton just is a 2 out of 3 months over $1,000,000, made like 13 grand a month ago. Comes down and hangs out with us the past week. I've talked to him several times on the phone. All that to bring to AI and technology. Now, this young man, and he'll be fine that I talked about it today, and I didn't rehearse this. It's the first time he'd ever been on the ocean, second time he'd ever flown in his life. Just a wonderful guy, grew up in the hills in Tennessee, and just a well-grounded young man, has his first kid on the ground, wonderful wife in his 20s. And we're sitting at breakfast, Tim, last week, and I just brought up to him, his name's Clayton. I said, "Clayton, you using AI at all?" He goes, "Oh, yeah. And he pops up this app. I'll look it up in a minute. You may know it. $169 a year, and it gives virtual assistants." And he goes, "Well, I can have up to 12 assistants. I'm using 2 now, and and I do this." And he just showed me all the stuff he's doing. And I recorded part of it and sent it to my partner, Stuart, and I'm like, "Dude, we have people like this in our company, because we're getting there from a corporate side." But then Clayton literally asked me, goes, "Well, what's something hard you're working on right now that Amanda's not doing for you?" Because I've had Amanda for 23 years. And I said, "Okay, I'm getting ready to go on this wildlife expedition in the Yukon in September, and I'm trying to figure out my best way to get there, taking gear and ammo and stuff." And he goes, "Hang on." And this young guy just tells us his virtual assistant, and he asked me, "What's your foundational airline?" Blah, blah, blah. He rattles this stuff off, gives the parameters. We're sitting there eating our breakfast. 3 minutes later, he goes, "Here, I'm going to send you these screenshots." Sends me 6 screenshots with, my best route was through Vancouver, and then jump on Air North versus Air Canada. I said, why does it say that? He goes, well, it says Air North is more friendly to outfitters. So I said, oh my God, my outfitter literally told me that. But all I'm saying is I'm a believer. I've got people using things beyond what I am right now personally. I use ChatGPT a lot, but my point is too that I am not worried at all from the standpoint of all I think will happen, like me going from 50 million in the early 90s to 100 million by the end of the 90s and into the 2000s because of the internet and being able to be efficient. I think that the AI phenomenon for the originator is going to bring some tools, and already is, where you will see your first legitimate $500 million producers. I mean, there's people that say, I do this, I do that. They've really got a company behind them, but people that are building teams, like, look at Watson, you mentioned him, he's him and 3 people, and the guy's, 350, 400 units every year. And I know they're using efficiencies like that, but I'm excited about technology and where AI can take us. I think you need to be a student quickly, and be out using some of the cool things that you're representing in cross-selling and others that are out there, but there's already classes, there's teaching, there's training, and just don't use it all. Some of this stuff can be so overwhelming. Like there's too many tools sometimes. You and I both know that, Tim. Get clear on what your goals are. What is your goals? I mean, if you really do want to be a $50 million producer, then back into that with how you use AI tools and how you use fiscal literacy tools. But I'm very pro. Can't wait for all the opportunities that are coming. When I started doing my own research, excuse me, I got a scratchy throat, but when I started doing my own research in the last couple of years, I love to read on what's happening and why in technology and things in our industry, but more from a bigger business standpoint. The first thing I read probably 36 months ago about AI is that the first impact is that everybody from a janitor to somebody who's got a small yard business to a astute professional will have an AI assistant if they want to take the time to learn how to use one. Well, then I just watched this, several month old loan officer in our company that maybe has been limited in other areas of his life, and he's kicking ass and taking names, quite honestly, with an AI assistant already. So that's my first answer to your 3-part question there. But that's my observation. I'm not afraid. I'm excited for people to go embrace this, because I really believe human beings will still be the ones buying houses, and they want a human being who can have advice with efficiency.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. I think that, right now I'm using AI for that exact reason. I'm sure that I'm not utilizing it as fully as I possibly can. Right. I think it's a mindset shift. I think you need to be thinking in a little bit of a different way. Our old school way of thinking is that I need to do everything. And now we need to be asking ourselves the question, what can AI do for me to help streamline the process so I can be highly efficient and serve more people? Exactly. So now when you're looking at, you've been, a leader in this industry for a very long time. And I know you've done a lot of recruiting over the course of your life. So in today's world, what are the characteristics that you're looking for when you're recruiting a loan originator? What are the personality traits, skill sets, et cetera, that you think are very important to being successful in this business going forward?
Yeah, wow. Great question. Of course, self-starter, confident, potential. It's interesting you say that. A coach to me years ago, and this was in athletics, said to me, there's so much potential, out there on the field or in front of us. Potential. People talk about, here we come the football season or whatever, look at the potential of that team or this team. But potential minus commitment always equals 0. Pretty powerful truth. And so I look at potential for sure, people and groups and individuals. But if you got to have that commitment, you've got to see the success breeds success. Of course, that's an old one for all of us in the truth, but commitment matters. And I think that's the biggest thing I look at in people is those skills of being committed to learning. Are you teachable? I started every seminar I think I ever did with "Are you teachable today?" I make people right at the top of the page. And it's not that I'm saying some people aren't. I'm saying some people aren't in certain moments or in certain periods of time. That's human nature. And so really measuring if someone's teachable, and then even trying to be an example of how to be teachable. I've hopefully always tried to stay teachable in my career and in my life in many different ways. Those are attributes that I look for, I think are important. And one of the things I can tell you at Benchmark I'm really proud of is incredibly low turnover. When we were coming out of COVID, we had a consultant that did a little research for us on, that's when everybody was still talking about virtual or stay at home. A lot of our underwriters have been virtual for 20 years. But anyway, this person was trying to sell me this retainer, helping you build your retained, employee count with your company. And he goes, I'd like to, do this test for you for free. And I said, sure, go ahead. He came back and went, Mr. McMahan, I went back 10 years. You have a 1.92% turnover rate over a decade with, almost 800 employees. And he said, does that surprise you? I said, no, it doesn't. But if you have a mindset of trying to attract people that have some of those, attributes, that's also going to create that too, where people stick and people, no matter, because there's ups and downs, man. I mean, we all know this industry, believe me, we all just went through it in the last 3 years. Where it's not what happens, it's what you do about what happens, Tim, that makes all the difference in your business and your life. And we've got to have grace. We need to have forgiveness. We need to have those attributes within organizations and collaboration. And that's the other one too. I look very much for collaboration mindset with people, because you want to have independence. You want to have strong ponies and, men and women that can go make things happen. But coming back and knowing that collaboration matters and that you're so much more powerful when you have a group that collaborates. I go way back here, Stephen Covey's original book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I know you and I were both students of that early on. And, the big 3 premise in that thing was the cycles of a salesperson. And this caps off the answer to your good question. But, it was salespeople all start as, you got to be dependent. You have to be dependent on somebody. You got to get your answers. You got to ask questions. And then most make it to independence. And independence is a wide valley. It's a place where you can be, honestly, just about financially free, for sure, make a lot of money and go do your thing and have a lot of freedom and do a lot of cool stuff. But that third level that Covey talked about is that interdependence. And if you can find people and attract people that want to become interdependent, and they bring their very, very unique gifts and their very cool skills and align with people that have the same heart maybe, but totally different giftedness and skills, boom. What can happen is mind-bending. I could not have ever imagined, honestly, 30 years ago, I'd have a multi-billion-dollar servicing portfolio and, have a company and affect people. But through aligning with others the way I just said it in my career as a top originator, because I definitely was thinking that way, so many things have happened, which have turned into other businesses that have nothing to do with the mortgage business. And there's so many things that can happen if you think that way and look for people like that have those attributes that you surround yourself with. That literally the sky's the limit, and you get to bless a lot of people along the way. So hope that answers that question.
It does. I have a follow-up question, and then I'll have a final question. The follow-up question is there a way that you assess and measure commitment? So like when you're recruiting an originator, how do you vet that out? Like, what are you looking for that would be displaying of that characteristic or that attribute?
Yeah, it's a good one. The way I think you measure that, of course, age matters from the standpoint of experience, but asking people, stories of what they've done, what they're most proud of that they've accomplished. And it could be someone saying, yeah, in college, I started a roofing business and I roofed houses and did this and this and built a few fences. I'm like, wow, tell me more about that. How'd you get the seed money? What did you do? Just find what people have done through just experience and stories. And it tends to lead to them telling you what they've overcome. And when you see what people have overcome, you can really get a lot of clues into what what walls they're willing to climb and how they'll make it through tough times, right? Because look at what our business has been through. We go through these cycles, of course, up and down. You and I've been through a lot of them. Somebody asked me the other day, as we come through this whole thing with higher rates and inflation and all that stuff, this isn't your first time. How many cycles have you been through? I think I've been through 7, Tim, maybe 8. I'll have to count again. But, S&L crisis definitely was the first big thing I was involved in from 87 through 92, resolution trust, all that stuff. And, you want to look for what people have overcome, because then you can have a pretty good confidence and know how to coach them too when those next walls, those next challenges and things come before them. So I think that's it, is just asking the right questions, and helping people to help you understand what they're trying to accomplish, what they're willing to overcome. What's the most challenging thing you've ever been in? Be bold. I think that's the other thing when you're interviewing and assessing. The other thing is, I think one of the most powerful things you can do, whether you're growing a team corporately or personally or an origination team, have somebody else interview you too. Don't be the only one. Don't leave it up to just yourself on decisioning. That's been a real strength of ours too, and of mine over time, is getting a second opinion, because so often, especially if you're younger in the business, you know this and you'll laugh, but we tend to go attract people like ourselves and then want to go duplicate ourselves. And it may look great in the beginning, but then you're going to have a bunch of people waiting for something to happen sometimes because you needed that different personality. And so sometimes getting a different person interviewing alongside you that you both respect and know each other. Like, again, you look at, two guys that run our company now, me and Stuart Hunter, and then the leadership team for bringing up, with people like I mentioned earlier, Denise, Marty Preston, Mike Watson, a lot of different personalities there, man. And that is certainly can be a clash sometimes, but big picture, it is the most beautiful symphony you have ever heard, when you get different personalities that can collaborate and talk and call BS on each other, quite honestly, and be bold and love and care. But you have to be open to doing that. So that's the last big point in assessing talent in people, is get others' opinions and angles on things, and you'll do way better at putting teams and organizations together that last and have huge outcomes.
I'm glad I asked that question. That's a wonderful answer. Final question. If the current 64-year-old Jim McMahan could have a conversation with the 18-year-old Jim McMahan, what advice would he give to him?
Wow. Yeah, I can, saying that out loud, that I have a 6'4" number in my world is crazy, isn't it?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I'm George Strait's song. I'm the old troubadour. I really did write in on a song, and I still feel 25. Interesting. Saturday night was at a dinner, and I got to hang out a little bit with Dean Dillon, who is in the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Country Singer Hall of Fame, and wrote 80% of George Strait's songs. So I got to talk about my hero with that guy. But, great question. I mean, what would I tell myself? I think I tell myself probably everything we just said in this hour-long interview. Seriously, I've practiced more. I think one of the big ones would be, do not tarry on worrying about the things that just don't matter. Meaning, to keep it simple, stupid, and don't sweat the small stuff. And it's all small stuff. You hear those terms. There's been books written about it. But focusing on principles, really looking at my faith, which is very important to me, and knowing that's always guided me and is real and proven itself out, to be able to then have faith in others with the right reality and proportions, and this moving forward. I mean, the other big one is just moving forward. It's not what happens, it's what we do about what happens that matters the most. I learned that, I heard that in my 18, 19, 20-year-old years, because I had a mom that pushed me. She literally made me go to that Jim Rohn seminar when I was 19 in a sophomore at Texas A&M back then. But, I still have the journal in this house, Tim, from the notes that day. It's pretty worn, but I keep that stuff. It's pretty cool. And even when I wrote all that stuff down, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. I thought that sounds so cool. What does that really mean? Right. And so I think, telling myself then would be, take the lessons you're learning and be patient, but be consistent and press on, press forward. Surround yourself with people that you can trust and that believe in you and you believe in them. And then with that faith-based action, forward we go, is the advice looking back. Awesome.
Jim, thank you so much for your generous time and your teaching and your wisdom, and there are just so many pearls of wisdom that you dropped into this conversation. I'm super grateful for it, and it was really nice to spend time with you.
Me too, brother. You're a good man, and just thankful for your heart and your giving nature. I knew the minute we met and the time we met, and never forget that first panel you were on. You were a difference maker. Your calmness and giftedness kind of blend into a very cool message, Tim. So thanks for all you do, and thanks for doing this with me.
Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in to listen to this episode of the 360 Experience podcast. My blessings to you. I wish you a wonderful rest of your month. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with another outstanding episode. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.